This is the download from Sounds Profitable, your daily source for the essential news in the business of podcasting. I'm Gavin Gaddis. Here's what you need to know for today, Wednesday, February 25th. First up, in graphic detail, publishers chase video podcast growth, but audio still leads. Digiday takes a bird's-eye view of recent research in the world of podcasting to look at how podcast audiences are adopting video in comparison to audio. Last week's Triton Digital U.S. podcast report finds 80% of 12,000 monthly listeners consume both audio and video. Audio-only consumption beats out video with 13% to video-only's 7%. Similarly, Cumulus Media and Signal Hill Insights podcast download fall 2025 found 17% of respondents who'd consumed a podcast in the past week only listened, while 8% watched. Edison Research's Evolving Ear webinar shows video discovery is making a big impact in how newcomers consume, with 77% of respondents age 13 plus in their first year of podcast consumption consuming podcasts with video you can actively watch, compared to 69% with long-timers, people who've been with podcasting for quite some time. YouTube is clearly working its recommendation magic on podcasting, and not just for the video side. The same report found 72% of first years and 68% of long-timers report listening to the audio version of a podcast once they first discovered it as video. Next up, Wisecrack wins Podcast of the Year at the 2026 Ambies. The 6th annual Ambies wrapped up last night in Brooklyn, with Wisecrack, the true crime comedy from Tenderfoot TV and iHeart Podcast, winning Podcast of the Year. Other highlights include Kara Swisher receiving the Governor's Award and the late Reginald Osei receiving the Impact Award posthumously. Pablo Torre, host of Pablo Torre Finds Out, was named the Vanguard Podcaster of the Year. Best Ad Read and Podcast Advertiser Innovator, category sponsored by Sounds Profitable, went to Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend and Charlie's Place, respectively. Next up, podcasts overtake spoken word radio in key metric. Edison Research's share of ear study just hit a milestone for one of its metrics. After a decade of charting respondents' daily spoken word audio time, Edison Research finds podcasts have passed AM/FM radio with the U.S. population 13 plus for the first time. Back in 2015, the share of ear data showed AM/FM radio took up 75% of spoken word share of ear with respondents, while podcasts accounted for just 10% of that share of ear. As of Q4 2025, the latest bit of data shows 40% of respondents' daily spoken word audio time goes to podcasts, while 39% went to AM/FM radio. And for our final top story, CMOs are more focused on growing revenue than brand awareness. According to a new survey conducted by Newton X for Adweek, 48% of executive-level marketers say revenue growth is now their primary objective, with long-term brand awareness a distant second at 24%. The pool of 501 respondents for the survey included 82% brand marketers, 18% agency professionals, and 20% C-suite executives. Economic uncertainty and rising AI-driven efficiency expectations are cited as two forces squeezing marketing departments from both sides, which puts podcasts in a particularly attractive position for those CMOs sharing their worries. We can do it both. Having proven time and again, podcast advertising can work both for brand awareness plays and closing the deal on sales, making podcasts an easier sell to CMOs who are expected to prove their work moves the revenue needle. And now for the rest of the news. Mark your calendars. The Black Effect Podcast Festival returns April 25th at Pullman Yards in Atlanta, hosted by Charlemagne the God, bringing live podcast tapings, panels, and merchandise from Black-owned businesses. Tickets go on sale March 12th at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Type C Studios, a media company dedicated to culturally resonant premium video and audio podcasts, launched yesterday with Chief Brand and Audience Officer Anila Reyes, COO Tanja Thigpen, and in the CEO slot, Nigeri Eaton. The latter of which you can catch on the Podglomerate's show Podcast Perspectives, which I've linked in today's newsletter. Signal Hill Insights President Paul Riesmandel has a new article on how brands can use brand lift to measure incrementality. PRX and Audio UK recently teamed up to host the 2026 Podcast Creator Summit in London, hosting a free day of workshops and networking at Apple's Battersea Power Station, and they've shared some photos from the event, which I've also linked today. OSHA has rolled out a new distribution capability that allows YouTube creators to turn their video library into podcast-ready audio. 4 award-winning podcast producers behind multiple award-winning chart-topping shows have launched Good Egg Audio, a worker-owned production cooperative. And Audio UK has announced the appointment of Chris Bogan as their new CEO. Bogan is slated to start March 30th. That'll do it for today's episode. Reminder that you can find all the links to everything I just talked about by clicking the one link in your show notes, which will take you to today's episode post on soundsprofitable.com, where you can also subscribe to get the newsletter version so you're emailed all the links the second this episode goes live. Today's episode was co-written once again by myself and the wonderful Emily Ely. Thank you, Emily. The download is produced by myself, Brian Barletta, and Tom Webster. For Sounds Profitable, I'm Gavin Gaddis, and I'll see you tomorrow.